3 things to look out for when the avoidance X comes back. You've worked hard to break free, you've healed, you've grown, and then bam, out of nowhere, your avoidant X comes back. And for a moment, that old pull drags you in. But listen to me. Just because they return doesn't mean they've changed. Just because they reach out doesn't mean they're ready. And if you're not careful, you could walk right back into the same cycle that broke you before. So today, I want to give you 3 things you must look out for when your avoidant X makes their grand re-entry. When someone from your past comes back, especially an avoidant X, it's easy to get caught up in the emotions of the moment. Your mind starts racing with memories. Your heart flutters at the possibility of rekindling something familiar. And you wonder, what if this time is different? But here's the truth. Real change isn't about words. It's about action. And if you don't stop to evaluate their behavior with a clear, grounded mindset, you might find yourself trapped in the same cycle that hurt you before. Avoidants have a pattern. When things get too close, they pull away. When they feel the distance, they come back. It's not necessarily out of malice. It's a deep-seated fear of intimacy and emotional vulnerability. So when they return, you have to ask yourself, are they here because they've actually done the work to grow, or are they just checking to see if the door is still open? Because if it's the latter and you let them back in without seeing true change, you're signing up for the same pain all over again. People don't just wake up one day and become emotionally available. Growth takes effort, self-awareness, and commitment. It takes accountability. Has your ex shown that? Have they acknowledged the ways they hurt you? Have they taken responsibility for their past behaviors? Or are they avoiding those conversations, sweeping things under the rug, hoping you'll just pick up where you left off? One of the biggest traps people fall into is believing in potential rather than reality. They want so badly to believe their ex is capable of change that they ignore the lack of evidence. But you can't build a future on potential. You have to deal with what's real. What's real is what they show you, not what they tell you. Watch for inconsistencies. Do they say they want a relationship but hesitate to make plans? Do they say they've changed but still react defensively when you bring up the past? Do they say they miss you but? Avoid discussing what went wrong the first time. These are red flags. Change isn't in the promise, it's in the follow-through. Another important question, have they done any real inner work? Avoidants don't just become secure on their own. They don't magically wake up one day and decide they're ready for emotional intimacy. It takes introspection, it takes therapy, self-reflection, reading, coaching, something that actively disrupts their old pattern. If they're coming back but haven't done any work to understand themselves or why they left in the first place, chances are they haven't changed. It's easy to get swept up in the emotion of their return. You feel wanted, you feel chosen, and maybe deep down you feel validated. But validation is a dangerous drug if it blinds you to reality. You don't need to be chosen by someone who doesn't know how to love you the right way. You need to choose yourself by recognizing whether they are truly capable of giving you what you deserve. So what should you look for instead? Real growth looks like open, honest communication. It looks like them acknowledging their past mistakes and actively taking steps to do better. It looks like emotional consistency. Showing up, making an effort, and staying present even when things get hard. It looks like them prioritizing your needs as much as their own instead of disappearing the moment things require emotional depth. If they're serious, they won't rush you into reconciliation. They won't pressure you to ignore the past and move forward blindly. They will give you space to observe their actions and prove over time that they've evolved. But if they're only here to soothe their own loneliness or stroke their ego, they'll get frustrated when you don't immediately jump back in. Pay attention to that. You are not here to be someone's emotional safety net. You are not here to be a revolving door. You are here to grow, to evolve, and to protect your peace. If your ex's return is aligned with that growth, great. But if their return is just another round of the same old story, it's time to close the chapter for good. When an avoidant ex comes back, it's natural to feel a rush of emotions. Maybe it feels like validation, like proof that they still care. Or maybe you start to wonder if this time will be different. But before you get swept away, you need to ask yourself a critical question. Are they coming back because they truly want to be with me, or are they just feeling lonely? This is where people get trapped. They mistake an ex's return for genuine love and commitment, when in reality, it might just be a moment of emotional weakness on the other person's part. Avoidants struggle with intimacy, but they also struggle with solitude. They push people away to maintain their independence. But when they've been alone for long enough, when life gets difficult, when they start to feel uncertain or disconnected, suddenly they crave familiarity. And that's when they reach out, not because they've changed, not because they've had a realization about how deeply they love you, but because they're uncomfortable sitting in their own loneliness. You have to be brutally honest with yourself when your ex returns. What's the context of their comeback? Are they reaching out after a long period of self-growth and reflection, or are they just popping up out of nowhere with a casual, hey, I've been thinking about you? Did they return after a breakup with someone else, after a career failure, after some personal struggle that made them seek comfort in something familiar? Because if their return is tied to their own circumstances rather than a genuine desire to rebuild a healthy relationship with you, then you're not their priority. You're their emotional crutch. Loneliness makes people do things they normally wouldn't. Makes avoidants, who are usually so determined to keep their distance, suddenly feel the urge to reconnect. But here's the thing, if you take them back without questioning their motives, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Because once that loneliness fades, once they feel stable again, once they've reassured themselves that they could have you if they wanted, there's a high chance they'll revert to their old ways. This is why it's so important to watch their behavior closely. If they're truly coming back because they value you, they'll show it through consistent actions, not just fleeting emotions. They won't just text when they're feeling down. They won't just want to see you when it's convenient. They'll actively work to rebuild trust, to address past issues, to prove that they're ready for something real. A major red flag is when they only seem engaged in moments of high emotion, but disappear when things get real. Maybe they're intensely affectionate when they first reach out, sending long messages about how much they've missed you. Maybe they reminisce about the good times, making you feel nostalgic and hopeful. But the second you try to talk about why things didn't work before, they shut down. They get distant. They say things like, can't we just move forward? Or why do we have to bring up the past? That's a sign they're not back for the right reasons. They're back because they need temporary relief, not because they're ready to grow with you. You have to be strong enough to differentiate between genuine love and emotional convenience. Real love means they're ready to do the work, to have the hard conversations, to stay even when it's uncomfortable. Emotional convenience means they're here because they need you right now, but not necessarily long term. And if you're not careful, you'll get caught in a loop where they only reach out when they're in need and disappear the moment they feel stable again. You deserve more than being someone's temporary fix. You deserve someone who chooses you because they truly want to, not just because they're lonely. So before you welcome them back, ask yourself, are they here for me, or are they just here because they don't want to be alone? Because the answer to that question will determine whether you're about to step into something real or just repeat the same painful cycle all over again. When your avoidant ex comes back into your life, you might feel an overwhelming urge to give them another chance. After all, you've spent time apart, you've healed, you've grown, and the thought of them being a part of your life again can bring up feelings of nostalgia, longing, and even hope. But here's the crucial question you need to ask yourself. What happens if I let them back in? Am I prepared to repeat the same cycle all over again, or am I truly ready to break free from the past once and for all? This is the real moment of truth. It's not just about whether you miss them, whether you still have feelings for them, or whether they say all the right things. It's about whether you're genuinely ready to face the possibility that the same patterns you've suffered through might resurface. Think about it. If you let them back in and nothing has changed on their end, if they haven't worked on their own issues, haven't addressed the emotional walls they've built, and haven't made any meaningful efforts to grow, what do you think will happen? The same thing that happened last time, the same emotional roller coaster, the same heartbreak, the same running away when things get too deep. Avoidants are often afraid of vulnerability and intimacy, and those patterns don't disappear because time has passed or because they simply say they've changed. True change requires effort, self-awareness, and a commitment to doing things differently. If they haven't shown up with those changes, if their return is based solely on the assumption that you'll take them back because of the emotional bond you once shared, then you're heading down the same path that leads to disappointment. And this time, the stakes are even higher because you've already been down that road before. You have to consider if you're ready to repeat the cycle. This means acknowledging that you might fall back into your old role, the person who waits for them, who tolerates their distance, who constantly tries to figure out how to make it work. Are you really prepared to lose yourself again, to watch as they pull away the moment things get emotionally intense, only to come back when they feel comfortable enough to seek connection again? Breaking free doesn't mean just physically walking away from them. It means breaking free from the emotional patterns that once tied you to them. It's about creating boundaries, not just for your own protection, but as a statement that you refuse to go back to a place where you're constantly waiting for someone to be who they aren't ready to be. You've already learned the hard way that love isn't about chasing after someone who can't give you what you need. Love is about mutual respect, effort, and growth. It's about finding someone who meets you halfway, not someone who needs you to bend over backward just to make the relationship work. And so the real question you need to answer is this: am I willing to stay in a relationship where I'm constantly questioning whether or not I'm enough for them, where I'm constantly unsure if they'll stay or go? Or am I ready to break the cycle and demand something more stable and real? You've already seen what happens when you don't take control of the situation. You've already witnessed the back and forth, the emotional manipulation, the confusion and the disappointment, the avoidance, the emotional unavailability, and the fear of intimacy. They're not just going to magically disappear. They're patterns that have been ingrained for a long time. If they're not actively working to break those patterns, you're going to find yourself right back in the same spot, hurt and frustrated. Wondering why things never seem to move forward? Now's your opportunity to take control. You've done the hard work to grow and heal. You've learned your worth. And you've come to understand that you don't need to chase anyone who isn't ready to give you the love and connection you deserve. So ask yourself, do you want to go back to the version of yourself that accepted the bare minimum? Or are you ready to move forward with someone who can truly match your energy, your growth, and your vision for the future? The key to breaking the cycle is not just walking away physically, but emotionally letting go. Let go of the idea that you can save someone. Let go of the hope that they'll suddenly change. Let go of the fear of being alone or the fear of missing out on something you think you could have had. The future holds something far better, something that won't require you to settle for less than you deserve, and that's the place you need to be in if you want to truly move forward. You're not going to find peace by reopening a door that should have been closed. The cycle can only break if you're willing to make the decision to walk away from it for good. One of the most important lessons you'll ever learn on your journey to healing and growth is that your growth matters. Your personal development, your emotional well-being, your peace of mind, all of these should be your top priority. And when an avoidant ex comes back into your life, it's crucial to remember that just because they return doesn't mean you should automatically let go of the progress you've made. In fact, it's essential to ask yourself if you're willing to sacrifice the stability you've built for the emotional roller coaster that could come with allowing them back in. If your ex truly values you and respects the progress you've made, they'll acknowledge the work you've done on yourself and honor it. They won't expect you to drop everything or revert back to old habits just to make them feel comfortable. Instead, they'll be willing to meet you where you are, accepting the fact that you've grown, that you're no longer the person you once were, and that you have new standards for how you expect to be treated. But that's only if they've done the same kind of work. If they're not coming back with that level of self-awareness, you're setting yourself up for a relationship where your growth becomes secondary to their needs. And that's a dangerous place to be. Your growth matters because it's the foundation of everything you've built. Over time, you've learned to stand on your own 2 feet. You become comfortable with who you are and where you're going. You've discovered your worth, set boundaries, and found the strength to move forward, even when it was hard. The person you are today is a result of all that hard work. Your confidence, your sense of self, and your inner peace are not things you should sacrifice for someone who isn't yet ready to meet you at that level. When you've done the work to heal, you're no longer willing to settle for a relationship that takes away from your peace or makes you question your worth. You're no longer willing to give pieces of yourself to someone who hasn't shown that they can give you the same level of commitment, effort, and emotional maturity. And this is especially important when dealing with an avoidant ex, because avoidants often struggle with emotional availability and intimacy. They push you away when things get too close, and they come back when things feel safe or when they need validation. But you've already experienced the pain of feeling like you were always left wanting more. You've felt the frustration of not being able to get through to someone who wasn't willing to let you in. So ask yourself, are you willing to go back to that place? Are you willing to let your emotional growth be compromised because of the hope that things might be different this time around? You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace and preserve the person you become. You have the right to say that the progress you've made is non-negotiable. Your growth is a reflection of your strength. It's a reminder of how far you've come, of how much you've learned, and of the person you are now. So when your ex comes back, remember that they are not the measure of your worth. You are, and if they cannot respect the person you've become, then they have no place in your life. This doesn't mean you have to be cold or dismissive. It doesn't mean you should shut them out entirely without giving them a chance to show if they've changed. But it does mean that you should never let them come back into your life in such a way that it undermines your progress. You are no longer the person who tolerated emotional neglect, who accepted crumbs of affection, who stayed in a relationship that was based on fear rather than love. The person you are today deserves more. And if they can't offer you that, then it's time to keep moving forward. If you truly value your growth, you'll never compromise it for someone who hasn't earned the right to be a part of your journey. You've worked too hard to get where you are, and you're too valuable to settle for less than the respect and love you deserve. Your emotional health is not something that should be up for negotiation, and you have every right to protect it. Ultimately, your growth matters because it's the key to your future. It's the foundation on which you'll build your next chapter. The people who come into your life should add to that growth, not hinder it. If your ex is willing to show up in a way that supports and nurtures your growth, then maybe there's a chance for a future together. But if they're not, if they're still emotionally unavailable, or if they're only back because they need something from you rather than be ready to give something in return, then it's time to walk away. You've come too far to let anyone, even someone from your past, take you backwards. When you're dealing with an avoidant ex, one of the most crucial aspects of protecting your emotional well-being is the ability to set and maintain strong boundaries. Boundaries are not just about creating distance. They're about ensuring that your emotional needs are respected, that you don't get pulled back into toxic patterns, and that you protect the person you've worked so hard to become. Setting boundaries with an avoidant ex may be one of the most difficult things you ever do, but it's also one of the most empowering actions you can take for yourself. Avoidants are notorious for their difficulty with intimacy and emotional vulnerability. They tend to keep others at arm's length and often struggle with committing to the level of closeness required for a healthy, balanced relationship. When they come back into your life, you might feel the old pull, the temptation to drop your boundaries in an attempt to recapture what you once had. But here's the thing, if you don't have boundaries in place, you're opening yourself up to the same emotional chaos that caused you pain the first time around. Without boundaries, you may find yourself right back in the emotional turbulence, constantly unsure of where you stand, always wondering if they'll stay or if they'll pull away again. Setting boundaries means recognizing that you are worthy of respect, consistency, and emotional security. It means understanding that you are no longer the same person who tolerated emotional unavailability, confusion, or inconsistency. Your boundaries are a reflection of your growth. They show that you know your worth and that you are unwilling to settle for anything less than what you deserve. They are not meant to punish anyone. They are meant to protect you, to ensure that you're not giving more than you're receiving, and that you're not allowing someone to treat you in a way that compromises your emotional health. But here's the challenge. With avoidant individuals, boundaries can sometimes feel like a wall to them. They may push against your limits, question your decisions, or even try to manipulate you into lowering them. Avoidants often struggle with the idea of someone saying no or setting firm limits. They may even try to make you feel guilty for maintaining those boundaries, suggesting that you're being too rigid or unreasonable. They may even use the old tactics of emotional distance, silence, or withdrawal to make you question whether your boundaries are worth it. This is where you need to be particularly strong. Your boundaries are there for a reason, and they are not up for negotiation. You don't need to justify or explain them repeatedly. You don't need to shrink yourself to accommodate someone else's comfort. In fact, the stronger and more consistent your boundaries, the more they will help clarify your relationship dynamic and reveal whether your ex is truly willing to meet you at the level of respect and emotional availability you require. If they can't handle your boundaries, if they push against them repeatedly, then that's a clear sign that they're not emotionally equipped to engage in a healthy relationship. Setting boundaries isn't just about saying no to certain behaviors, it's about creating a foundation of respect and self-worth. It means you decide when and how you engage with someone. For example, if your ex is reaching out and you're not sure whether they're genuinely ready for a committed relationship, you can set a boundary by saying, I need consistency and transparency to move forward. Or if they start pulling away again, you can set a boundary by saying, I'm not available for a relationship where I feel uncertain or neglected. By setting these clear boundaries, you are reinforcing that you will not tolerate emotional inconsistency or behavior that doesn't align with your values and needs. But boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself from others, they're also about honoring your own emotional needs. This is where self-compassion comes in. Boundaries allow you to prioritize your own healing and emotional stability. When you respect your own needs and limits, you give yourself permission to move forward, to heal, and to build a future that aligns with your values and desires. You give yourself the freedom to create space for someone who is willing and able to meet you at the level of intimacy, trust, and respect you deserve. At first, setting boundaries might feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to people-pleasing or avoiding conflict. But over time, you'll see how empowering it is to stand firm in your limits. You'll recognize that boundaries aren't walls that shut people out. They are protective fences that ensure only those who are genuinely capable of respecting you get to come close. In the case of your avoidant ex, setting boundaries might be the key to determining whether they are capable of offering you a healthy, stable relationship. If they respect your boundaries, it will show that they've grown, that they value you, and that they are ready for the emotional intimacy you deserve. But if they push against those boundaries, try to guilt you or make you feel bad for protecting yourself, then it's a clear sign that they have not changed and they are not capable of giving you the emotional stability you need. In the end, maintaining boundaries is about protecting your peace, your growth, and your emotional well-being. It's a non-negotiable aspect of self-love and self-respect. Without boundaries, you're vulnerable to being pulled back into old patterns that don't serve you. With them, you stand strong, grounded in your worth, and ready to move forward, whether with someone new or in a healthier relationship with yourself. When an avoidant ex comes back into your life, it's essential to assess whether their actions match their words. Words are powerful, but they can also be empty if not backed by consistent actions. Avoidants, in particular, have a tendency to speak emotionally, sometimes saying exactly what they think you want to hear in the heat of the moment, only to fall back into their old patterns once the initial excitement fades. This is why it's crucial to watch for patterns of behavior rather than relying solely on promises or emotional outbursts. One of the key signs to look for when evaluating whether your avoidant X has truly changed is consistency. Avoidants are often inconsistent because they struggle with emotional intimacy. They want closeness, but they fear it, and when it gets too intense, they pull away. When they return, it's tempting to believe that this time will be different, that they've changed, that they've learned how to communicate better or deal with their emotions in a healthier way. But the real test of change isn't in their words, it's in their consistent behavior over time. If they've truly grown, they will demonstrate a level of emotional consistency. They won't only show up when it's convenient for them, but they will consistently engage with you in a meaningful way. They will show up when things are difficult, not just when they feel emotionally safe. This means being reliable, responding to your needs, and being willing to engage in difficult conversations without pulling away when things get intense. If they are only present when things are easy and avoid emotional depth, then that's a red flag that nothing has truly changed. Another important thing to watch for is how they handle conflict. Avoidants often shut down during arguments or difficult conversations, not because they don't care, but because they're emotionally overwhelmed by closeness and vulnerability. However, someone who has genuinely worked on their emotional issues will not shy away from conflict. Instead of withdrawing or becoming defensive, they will engage in constructive conversations and show a willingness to compromise and understand your perspective. If they continue to react with emotional distance or stonewalling when conflicts arise, it's a clear sign that they haven't fully addressed their avoidance issues. You also need to pay attention to whether their actions align with their promises. It's easy for an avoidant to tell you what they think you want to hear in the moment, especially if they're trying to reconnect. They may say all the right things, how they've changed, how they miss you, how they're ready to commit, but promises are only valuable when backed by real effort. Do they follow through on their commitments? Do they make time for you, even when life gets busy? Do they make an effort to be present? Or do they continue to prioritize their own comfort and distance over your needs? If their actions don't align with their words, then it's time to question whether they're truly ready for the kind of relationship you need. The past is another important factor to consider. Avoidants often struggle to process their emotions, and unresolved issues from the past can continue to impact their behavior in the present. When they return, are they willing to have open conversations about what went wrong? Do they take responsibility for their actions? Or do they minimize the past and brush it under the rug? Genuine growth comes from an honest reckoning with one's mistakes and a willingness to learn from them. If your ex is unwilling to discuss past issues in a healthy, open way, that's another sign that their return may not be for the right reasons. One of the most critical things to evaluate is their level of emotional availability. Avoidants tend to hold back their emotions, often out of fear of being vulnerable. But real change means being open to sharing one's feelings and needs. When they come back, are they willing to be vulnerable with you, or do they continue to shut down emotionally when things get too close? Emotional availability is a huge part of any healthy relationship, and if your ex is still struggling to open up and let you in, they may not be ready for the kind of connection you're seeking. Ultimately, you need to trust your instincts and be patient. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time to build trust, especially with someone who has a history of avoiding emotional intimacy. If your ex is genuinely committed to growth, they will show you through consistent action that they are ready to invest in the relationship. But if they continue to pull away, avoid difficult conversations, or only show up when it's convenient, then their return may be more about convenience for them than a real desire for a deeper connection with you. Actions speak louder than words, and it's through their behavior that you'll know whether this is a genuine change or just another false promise. In conclusion, when your avoidant ex comes back, it's essential to approach the situation with clarity, patience, and self-respect. Focus on assessing their actions rather than getting caught up in emotional promises, and make sure their behavior aligns with your values and the person you become. Remember, you've done the work to grow, and your peace, emotional well-being, and boundaries are worth protecting. Only you can decide if they're truly ready to meet you at the level of respect and commitment you deserve. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on this crucial aspect of your journey. Stay strong, stay grounded, and don't settle for anything less than the love and respect you deserve. Goodbye, and may you continue to grow and build a future filled with healthy, fulfilling relationships.